Hello, everyone, and welcome to an episode of the Concussion Nurse podcast where, like I said, we're doing this a bit backwards. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of using your own voice and what I mean by that to create safety and connectedness and calm in your own nervous system. Next week, we're going to drop an episode that talks more about the autonomic nervous system as a whole and what its job is and its role in our function as a human, particularly its role and its importance of needing to be addressed in concussion recovery. But like I said, that's going to be next week. So we're doing these a little bit backwards. But that's because, in my own life, this has been an area that I have struggled. I've shared before, I am 100% a recovering people pleaser. And when you are that person, you constantly do not use your voice. And when I say do not use your voice, it means you are not vocalizing your own needs. You're not vocalizing your own desires. You're not setting or vocalizing your own boundaries. And there was a period of my own life, literally, when I say, people ask me all the time, I love that I just tangent all over here for you. Do I have to do these things for the rest of my life? Right? When we're talking about rehab and we're talking about these strategies for nervous system regulation and all these pieces. And I like to say, you're going to do whatever you need to do to serve yourself, to feel the way you want to feel. Adjusting and shifting your nervous system does not happen overnight. If you're someone like me, this is absolutely going to be a lifelong process, right? Like there was years where I woke up feeling like I was going to vomit the second my feet hit the ground before my day even started. It was the worst feeling ever, right? And for me, that traced back to when I started doing all the work to my nervous system. And I was waking up in fight and flight. I was waking up in high levels of anxiety. And for me, that showed up in my body as nausea in my stomach, right? I've done a lot of work on myself to understand how these different things and how these different states of my nervous system show up, both in how I feel, how I act, how I think, how those different states influence the decisions that I make, my reactions or my responses to different scenarios. And as I become and have become more in tune with my own body and how safety and calm and groundedness feels in me, versus when I start to shift into fight or flight, how does that show up in my body? Versus when I'm moving into shutdown and immobilization, how does that show up into my body? You guys, you're going to hear me talk about this all the time if you aren't already sick of me hearing it. Being able to shift your nervous system, you need to be able to connect to it and know what it feels like. And if you're someone that has been dissociated or disconnected from your body for a really long time, that's a gradual process. It does not happen overnight, right? And so for me, at this point, really 4 solid, in-depth, digging personal discovery years for figuring this out for myself. And so very recently, there was a scenario in my life that came up and I realized I just didn't feel good. The scenario and the way it played out wasn't sitting well in my body. It made me feel kind of icky, right? It brought up butterflies in the not good sense. It was brought up these kind of the anxious thoughts, the worrisome thoughts, right? So it didn't feel good. It felt, ugh. And I went through this internal debate of do I say something to the other person? And when I say using your voice, I don't ever mean to react. I don't ever mean to be cruel. I don't ever mean to hurt or harm. When I say use your voice, I mean, you're very intentional with the choices of words you're using and why you're saying what you're saying. We're going to talk about more of that in a second. So for me, back to this scenario and why this podcast episode is happening and why I'm kind of shares with you too, is there was this scenario that really just felt ugh. And because I've gotten so in tune with recognizing how things feel in my body, I knew that I needed to do something for me to help shift this energy out of the ugh. But I also knew part of the, right, this technical term, I knew that part of the came from this interaction that I had had with someone. Not in a bad way. No one did anything wrong, but how it settled in my system just didn't feel good. So I went through this internal dialogue of like, should I say something? Should I just leave it and move on? Like, what should I do? And I finally decided, I'm going to say something in a very calm, respectful way. And I'm just going to explain how this interaction made me feel. It's no one's fault. I just want them to understand how I felt. So I reached out to this person and I just said, hey, I hope you're having a decent day. I just wanted to touch base about something. And I shared how I felt. And then that led to a very great conversation with this person, and everything was resolved. Not that there was really an issue, but everything was good and all these lovely things. But the biggest thing that came out of this was that the moment I shared my truth, the moment I intentionally chose my words to share what I was feeling without laying blame, because there was no blame to be laid, okay? But I intentionally shared how the interaction had made me feel. I immediately felt my body start to settle and calm. Immediately. The anxiety I'd been feeling, there was the hovering kind of butterflies in my chest, they were gone. I get these creepy crawly feelings, I always describe it, in my arms. It's not very comfortable. It was gone. I instantly felt more grounded and more calm in my body. Instantly. Just, and I say just, even though I know it's not always easy, but just by using my voice and vocalizing out loud how I was feeling in my needs. I'd never experienced that so powerfully in myself until that moment. And the beautiful thing is I'm truly in this chapter in my life where I'm getting lots of practice using my voice. Lots of practice using my voice. It's quite comical. And it's in a fun, good way. But the more I get to practice using my voice, the more grounded I feel in myself, the more calm I feel in myself, the more confident I feel in myself, the happier I'm finding myself. The more I'm expressing and actually piecing together what it is I need, I want, and vocalizing that in a respectful way, the more I'm feeling confident in who I am and the trust that I have in myself. It was funny. I was driving with my stepdaughter one day. This just came back to my memory. And she, beautiful, lovely 15-year-old girl, right? So if anyone has 15-year-old girls, you know that their minds think a lot. And my stepdaughter was concerned and fretting a little bit about a relationship with one of her besties and how she felt like things had shifted and things had changed and what was going on. And she was getting a little bit worked up. And I said to her, honey, why, instead of assuming something has happened, instead of sitting here worrying over and over again if something has changed, I said, why don't we simply send her a message and ask her? I kind of got a look of terror from my 15-year-old stepdaughter. And I said, I'll help you. I said, do you want my help? She said, yes. So together, we crafted a message, because everyone does everything via text when you're 15. I feel like when as adults, everyone does everything via text. We crafted a message for her to simply say, hey, I hope things are cool. I just want to share with you, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm noticing. And I just wanted to check in, are we good? There was more to it than that, obviously. And her friend texted her back and she's like, girl, we're awesome. We're great. Oh my gosh, whatever it was. And I watched my stepdaughter's body just sink back into the chair of the car. We were driving when we did this, sink back into the chair of the car, and the smile just come across her face. And I said, doesn't that feel better? And she was like, yeah. Right? She'd been going down this path of spiraling and worrisome thoughts of anxiety. And you've heard me say enough on this podcast. And if you follow me on Instagram or ever hear me talk, anxiety and that whirling thought is the physical manifestation of your sympathetic fight or flight nervous system. And so you need to have tools to shift that energy, right? But one of the tools that we have that I feel like we don't use enough, because I know I never used it enough, definitely never used it enough, was the power of actually using your voice to share your needs, to share your desires, to ask your questions, to set a boundary. Funny story, when I say I'm getting lots of scenarios and lots of examples of using my voice, I have recently started dating, right? So I co-parent my son with his dad, and that's great. And so I've recently started dating. And I met someone once that said, "Oh, you're emotional." And I was like, "Excuse me?" Now, full disclosure, like, I can be an emotional person. I'm well aware of that. The scenario that I was being called emotional was not emotional. And so instead, I just said, "No." I said, "Not emotional, but here's who I am. And here is my expectations. And here's what I'm looking for. And that's super cool if that doesn't work for you, but like, that's me." And again, past Natasha, people-pleasing Natasha, and if anyone here listening to this is a people pleaser, you will not voice your wants, desires, and needs for fear, at least I speak for me, for fear of rejection, for fear of pushing somebody away, for fear of not getting an opportunity for something. So instead, you hold back who you are and you hold back your voice and your vocal cords for fear of something else. But there was this really powerful shift for me that if you don't like who I am, or you don't like what I say, or my needs, you can't meet my needs, that's totally cool. That is not a reflection of me. It just means that this isn't meant to be, right? I always had that fear of not using my voice, of being too much. And now I'm in this place where I am who I am, and I really like who I am. There's still room to grow. There will always be room to grow. I'm an evolving human being who's constantly doing the work, but I'm going to be me. And if me being me is too much for you, and if me using my voice in a respectful way, and then this is a give and take, right? So obviously I hope that the people in my world will use their voices and express their needs and their desires with me as well. But if it's too much, then we just don't click. That's cool. That is not a reflection on them, and that is not a reflection on me. But you standing in your voice is powerful for you. You standing in your voice builds your own self-confidence. You stating your needs, your desires, your boundaries, your limitations, using your voice to state what you need, builds your self-love and your trust in yourself. Because what that does for you internally is when you are then in a situation that doesn't feel good, you can trust on yourself to put your foot down, to step into your power, to vocalize that need, and then to make the decision for whatever it is that you need to do. And so through this journey of learning about myself, helping my daughter through it and seeing her instantly calm, talking with some of my coaching clients on this concept of like, how do we set boundaries, right? People pleasing is a real thing. And I have a couple clients who are the most lovely humans in the world who will absolutely put their hand up and say, that is me. And getting messages from them, honestly, just in the last few weeks, we've kind of gone deeper into this topic in my clinic and with my clients itself, getting messages from them being like, Natasha, I need to share this with you. There was an example and a scenario where I was really nervous to share with someone my feelings around a topic, or for fear of disrupting their emotions. But I knew it was something I needed to say in a calm, intentional way. And she's like, absolutely, I got the butterflies, I got all the things. She's like, and I did it. She's like, and not only did I instantly feel myself settle and ground, she's like, the person received it so well. And we were able to have a conversation to help us continue to move our relationship forward in whatever way that relationship and friendship moves forward. Right? Someone else messaged saying that they had used their voice and actually set a boundary. And it felt really good. And their friend complimented on that, saying like, this is a new you and this is amazing. Like, yes, right? We have all these tools that we talk about when we talk about regulating our nervous system. And I'm guilty of it, right? I talk about cold plunging. I talk about breathing. I talk about movement. I talk about screaming into a pillow. I talk about getting out in nature. I talk about going for a walk. I talk about all of the things. And I realized the one tool I've never talked about, really, I don't think, I mean, I talk about it in different contexts, but is the tool of using your own voice. The tool of understanding and taking that time to understand what your needs are, or when a boundary, whatever that boundary is, has been crossed, or you need to communicate a boundary, and the power of actually vocalizing that. And again, just recognizing it in myself that this one day in particular, it was just this one day that I was like, oh, again, nothing wrong happened, but the interaction just didn't feel good. And I just needed to say something. And the greatest thing was like, I said it. The person didn't even need to respond, in all honesty, for me to already feel better. But the fact that the person did respond and said, thank you for sharing this. Thank you. And we could talk through it. And it was great. But that wouldn't have happened potentially if I hadn't found the courage to use my voice as well. So basically what I want to say with this episode, I'm like harping on this whole concept, is that when you're looking at your tools for calming your nervous system, I also want you to look at the scenarios that you absolutely start to notice those symptoms ramp up, right? So in our workshop, The Human Foundation, which is evergreen and you can have it anytime, we talk about how you begin to notice your like ladder of escalation. Okay. And so it's getting curious for yourself on what are the scenarios that I really feel this, like the anxiety or the activation start to happen. And if that is starting, if you notice the trend that it always happens when you have to vocalize what you need, want, and desire, then we need to find a way to help you start to use your voice, right? And I think sometimes the easiest way to do this is to start by sharing with people that you feel very safe with, right? To know that as you practice stating your needs and stating your boundaries, doing it with people that you trust and feel safe with and know that will be receptive is a safe way to start to push that comfort zone for yourself, right? I'm not going to go tell you to use your voice in a scenario where you don't feel safe and you question things. Like that's just not a good way to start practicing. But if you notice that this starts to come up for you a lot every time you need to use your voice, or if you notice that you don't use your voice and you kind of push yourself down and dampen yourself down instead of responding and instead of saying what you need to say, then this is a muscle you get to stretch. This is a muscle you get to work. And maybe you start, like I said, you start with sharing things and stating things and using that voice in scenarios that you feel safe with people that you feel safe with. Right? Then maybe you kind of step it out into, okay, I'm going to use it in my medical appointments, or I'm going to use it however it is, right? We all have these different pockets in our lives that let us work different skills. And so we want to find your pocket to challenge your comfort zone of vocalizing out loud your voice to help you then create that safety in yourself. I hope this episode, it was a little bit different. We all know that when I talk about concussion, I have that absolute holistic approach where, we can't just do rehab. There's so many factors that link into us being successful, amazing human beings. This is one of them. As a clinician or someone on a journey, to be honest, it's one I'm continuing to do. It's a muscle I'm continuing to stretch and work every single day. And will probably be working for the rest of my dang life, to be honest. But it's one that I think we don't talk about enough. So next week, we're going to drop an episode that's more on the autonomic nervous system is absolutely the foundation of health and healing. And what do I mean by that? What can you do for yourself? What are those pieces? And we're going to dig deeper into that in next week's episode. So for today, I hope you found some courage in this. Please absolutely reach out and send me a message on Instagram telling me and sharing with me examples of when you do this. Those are some of my favorite messages to get. They bring a huge smile to my face, and I want to cheer you on. So until next week, my friends, have a lovely day. That's today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you liked what you heard, give us a like, give us a share, give us a tag on Instagram, and please never hesitate to reach out. We love communicating and connecting with you. Until next week, my friends, have a marvelous day.